This is Dan, and this is the Napkin Academy. Today's lesson is the process of visual thinking, otherwise known as the look, see, imagine, show process. The primary reason why those of us who like to draw and like to use pictures to explain things have not been taken seriously by business people is because business people do not perceive that we have any kind of rational, repeatable, measurable process behind this magic that we do. There's nothing there in this process, if there's a process at all, that the typical business person can measure and say, okay, I can understand what is the return on investment of drawing. Because in the past, there's never been any sort of a rational way to think about what we do. We just say, oh, look, I had an inspiration. I drew a picture. And the boss says, nope, not going to work. I want a written document with a spreadsheet or two that shows me the numbers. These silly little pictures of yours are not going to cut the mustard. But we know that that is patently wrong. There is absolutely a process that all of us go through as we sit down to say, well, what does my idea look like? So what we're going to do for the rest of this lesson is take what is perceived by most people to be a very fluffy concept, and we're going to shift their perception, and we're going to shift our own perception. We're going to change our perception into a process which is specific, which is testable, and which is repeatable. We are going to show them that the creation of pictures to solve problems can be done in a specific way. It can be tested and it can be taught and it can be repeated. And the way we're going to do that is by saying we do have a process. The process of visual problem solving, the process of visual thinking, has 4 steps. The first step involves us not drawing anything, but simply looking at the world that is around us. It's almost a kind of a passive process. It's just really the idea of scanning the world around us and seeing what is out there in terms of data or ideas. And then the next step turns that around a little bit. And instead of just randomly looking out at things, we now start to see the patterns that exist among all of the things that we were looking at. And now we're beginning to recognize those patterns. We're starting to make sense of what it is that we saw. Then, the third step is, once we've got everything in our own mind, in our mind's eye, we can close our eyes and begin to imagine ways to think about what we saw in different ways. Turn it upside down, shake it around. How can we move some of those patterns? How can we shift it? How can we change what it is that we saw? Then we come up with a new model, which then we go into the last step. Let's make him a little bit happier in this step, which is when we take this idea that we've come up with and we've now drawn it out in our mind's eye, and we show it to other people so that they can see the same things that we did. The names of these 4 steps are very simple. The first step is we simply look. The second step then is we see. The third step is we imagine. And the fourth step is we show. Now, this shouldn't be a huge surprise that this is a good way to rationalize the visual problem-solving process, because this is something that we do all the time. Look, see, imagine, show. Although it sounds highly conceptual, it's not. This is the way we live our lives. Imagine for a moment that we found ourselves standing along a street. And it's a busy street, and there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of activity. And we're uncertain. We need to cross that street. What is the first thing that we do, at least that we've been taught to do, is, well, we look. We look up and down the street. We just look. We don't step into the street yet, we just look. And then, imagine if there was a car coming down the street. Aha! We see that there is something coming along. Do we step into the street yet? No, we do not, because we do one more process first, which is we stand there and very, very quickly, with our eyes closed and the car barreling down, this takes hundredths of a second, we imagine what are the possibilities. If I step into the street, am I going to get hit by that car? Or do I have time to run across the street before the car comes? We imagine that in our mind before we take any kind of action. And then the last step, of course, is having imagined what was possible, we wait. And then finally, after the car has driven past, we take action. We step across the street, showing that we understood what it took not to get hit by a car. Looking, seeing, imagining, and showing. It is a process that we are so comfortable with because it is the process by which we look at the world and take action today. All we're going to do in visual problem solving is find a series of ways to make these steps overt, repeatable, measurable, and specific. Now, you may be thinking, okay, I'm a creative person. I'm competent and capable and confident in drawing. Why do I need a process? Well, because we need more confidence. Having this process, this look, see, imagine, show process is going to be important to us because what it's going to allow us to do is know that we have a good way to repeatably, confidently solve any kind of problem that we face by saying, I don't have to panic. I know how to face down any one of these problems. I have my process, and if all else fails, I can pull that out. It's also going to be important to others because it's going to give them, who might be a little bit uncertain about what we're proposing, great confidence in us because we will be able to show them, look, this isn't some random crazy idea. If we simply look, see, imagine, and show, we are going to be able to go from something that is confusing and uncertain and complicated to something which is clear and understandable. And we can do it repeatably, and we know how to do it. And guess what? We can even show you how to do it. That's why we need the process. So, in summary, the whole process, the 4-step process, really is composed of 4 essential pieces, and the way they actually look isn't really entirely linear. They look a little bit more like this. Looking and seeing are in a constant cycle. We look at the world and we see the patterns. We look at the world and we see the patterns. And after we've done that enough, what actually happens is we've gotten enough into our mind of what things look like and how we can see them, that we can start to imagine pretty effectively ways to change them and ways to improve them. And once we've been able to imagine pretty well, then it's not difficult to be able to come up with the drawing that we need to be able to show to someone else, aha, that's what it is that you're trying to show me. And then the beauty of the process is at this point, for our audience, it then gets handed off into their mind so they can take the picture that we're showing them and they can look at it and they can see it. And then our audience can start to imagine what role do they play in our picture, and then they can create their own picture which they can show, and we get this wonderful virtuous cycle going that includes ourselves and our audience and a very clear and wonderful and understandable articulation of any idea thanks to this process.